this is the last session for today, and we're going to be talking about mobility and plant personnel. So mobility in the plants. This is going to be our topic for this afternoon. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we're having a nice entertainment session this afternoon after our events this afternoon at Universal City Walk. So there'll be some buses and plenty of information out in the lobby about how to make that happen. There's some talk of rain for this evening, but they assure me that all the meals and everything are happening inside, so we should be good. So please don't forget that. So with that, let's get started. I think one thing that we've been watching this space for a few years, and one thing that we've noticed is that this mobility stuff is really penetrating into the plant in lots of different ways, but not every plant. And there's still enough confusion out there about what's a good way to do this and should I do it at all. And so we've got companies that are suppliers that are offering solutions like this that manufacturers and producers can take up, and we've got manufacturers who are already there in some way, and we've got folks who are still strategizing about how to get there. So it's an interesting and still developing time, but in the meantime, everybody's got a smartphone, and it's just kind of a flood of change, so it seems inevitable. And so we know that there's a big role. We know that these devices are also windows into connected devices in the Internet of Things, which we've been hearing a lot about as well. So they're mobile, and so are maybe some of the things, but you put the two together and you can get a lot of benefit. And then just finally, we'll talk a little bit about mobile device management solutions and how you might think about that for your plants. So as I said, your smartphone is the interface. This is the famous now, I guess, Nest example, learning thermostat, but you can control it from your smartphone. And your smartphone can also be the interface to some intelligent connected assets. So we see a number of different kinds of solutions that have some kind of controls interface or like HMI level interface with manufacturing information. It's a nice way to do some production monitoring on the go and some efficiency and downtime and data visualization and things like that. But it's pretty rare that we see anybody actually controlling things from these devices, especially if these devices are not right next to the machines. We looked at, we did a survey some years ago, a couple years ago for 2010 data, and looked at a number of different ways that companies are already using various kinds of mobile devices. And we find that when we go back and look at it again in 2013, it seems like every category has gone up. So we can see some evidence that this is going into the plants. And it's not just smartphones, it's all kinds of mobile solutions. We've been talking about, also at this conference, information-driven manufacturing in addition to the Internet of Things. And one of the components of that is getting the information, in real time when you need it and when things are happening. And there's no better way to do that than with some mobile solutions. So that's one of the reasons we're looking at this and continue to look at this at ARC. Now, how do you get this? I already mentioned that maybe some of your suppliers, like your ERP suppliers and your automation suppliers, are starting to build this kind of capability into their solutions. So that means that they are, in some cases, just developing a web page that you can go to from your smartphone browser. Or maybe in some cases it's a little more elaborate than that, and they've got an application. And in some cases, some of these companies maybe even have something like a mobile device management solution to help companies manage this problem more effectively on a little bigger scale. When we look in manufacturing and think about, well, what kinds of things are people doing with this? What kinds of opportunities are there? The first one that always pops to the top of the list is this general category of maintaining things. So this could be anything from field service kinds of operations, which seems like a no-brainer, to in-plant operations, or maybe close by or far-flung parts of the plant. So we see solutions commonly for dispatching and work orders, things like a little bit of some GIS and that sort of thing that falls in here. And how do you attack the problem? Maybe some troubleshooting guides and some work instructions, spare parts checking and ordering, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's kind of been a beachhead in this area for a long time. We also see, even when you get into the plant, things like inventory management and quality assurance and problem resolution. If your supervisor has access to a lot of information via a smartphone or a tablet, something that you can carry around and access easily, then little problems don't become big problems, and things start to develop and go sideways, you can get it fixed pretty quickly. So we see that as an emerging use for these things. We also see some use in tracking assets. So you might be, I can't think of an example of it at the moment, but the next piece is collaboration. So collaboration is another really good example that we're seeing. So, if you're trying to solve a problem, instead of flying in your corporate experts from wherever they are located, you can get on the phone and maybe find somebody who knows about it pretty quickly, or get an expert through some systems, and get the problem solved or addressed much quicker. And you might be able to, take a picture or a video or record a funny sound or things like that. So you can get that kind of collaboration, that kind of interaction to make things happen much faster. Another important one, and I think this one, as people start to learn about it, is catching on quickly. Things like in the environmental health and safety area, things like incident reporting and video monitoring and things like that. So if you happen to be walking around the plant and there's a leak or something that could be a safety hazard, there are some apps available where you can just right now create an incident report and get that in the system and get things moving and getting it fixed right away. So get it documented and get the solution on the way. In operations, again, a lot of times we see supervisors use this, but we also see some cases where instead of putting a traditional touchscreen interface monitor with a computer somewhere nearby in the plant, they're just mounting a tablet on the wall. So it's not really too mobile at that point, but it's the same technology. So we see that kind of thing happening. But we also certainly see things like supervisors carrying their tablets around, and instead of clipboards, doing on the fly schedule changes and routing changes and things like that. By feeding the right kind of data to it and providing some visualization, you can start to do performance analysis and better decision making and things like that. And then the last one that's possible, and with this technology pretty easy the logistics of it become pretty easy, are some things like training and augmented reality. So those are just a few of the areas that we're seeing this kind of technology take hold in manufacturing. And of course, a big part of the puzzle, an emerging part, is the BYOD, bring your own device concept, which it seems like, households and people were much quicker to get the smartphones than industry. So why not take advantage of it? And that's what the employees and that's what the workers want to do anyway. If you're going to do something like that, though, there are some things to think about, and the obvious ones are, well, how do I protect my data, and how do I keep things secure, and how do I do this in a way that the workers can still keep their cell phone for the reason they want it, and also use some of the industrial stuff as well, some of the corporate information as well. So that brings us to the topic of mobile device management. These are kind of platforms or technologies to help manage this collection of mobile devices, whether yours or whether BYOD ones. So they provide functionality like software distribution and policy management and inventory management, security, and service management for mobile devices. And so that means that they can distribute the software to the phones, and they can do it securely. They can provide data. They can configure the phone so that it meets certain corporate standards. They, in some cases, can put a corporate piece and a private piece. So these are for all kinds of tablets. Typically, when you use these devices, then you're no longer restricted to a particular one particular phone or model or brand. You can handle a wider variety of technologies. And another sort of trend in this area is this broader notion of enterprise mobility management, which is a little bit bigger concept than mobile device management, but it's kind of a blurry line because the mobile device management folks are often enhancing their products or becoming more like enterprise mobile management. So these solutions, though, feature things like the ability to develop the applications that you're going to use and manage them and construct the policies that you need. So there are some additional features. It's probably not worth too much of a distinction because the important point is to look for the features that you want and don't worry about the name because the names are changing and probably will continue to change. So the intent of this mobile device management tool is to optimize this functionality and security of a network of business-related mobile devices while minimizing cost and downtimes. In other words, it's so you can use these phones to do your work without jeopardizing security. They can control and protect your corporate data and the phone's settings for all the devices that you allow to connect to your network. And the main components are these. I think we mentioned them, but they're software distribution and application management, policy management, inventory or phone device management, security management, and service management. And two main models, although there are variations of this, you can deploy these things on-premise or in the cloud. And the usual set of trade-offs applies when you think about this. Some of the players in this kind of solution are companies like Good Technology and SAP and AirWatch and Mobile Iron and FiberLink Communications and AT&T. I also just wanted to take a minute and talk about the mobile devices and the Internet of Things, the industrial Internet of Things. Because there's a lot of similarities in how you have to connect the devices. Now, on the mobile device management side, we've been talking about these things: software distribution, application management, policy management, inventory, device management, security, and service management. So it's a fixed set, but more importantly, it's kind of a known, it's a tablet or a smartphone, and it's a person. So you've got a lot of flexibility in how you're dealing with that. In the Internet of Things environment, on the one hand, the technology is very similar because you still have to bring devices online, you have to maintain the security, you have to deploy applications and monitor the data and things like that. But it seems like there are enough nuances there that we often see a slightly different application developed to address these two things. So that's why some of the names may be more better known in one area than the other. Because on the connected device management side, as you can see here, it's a lot more complicated environment. So you've got an array of devices of possibly various kinds. They may all use different kinds of communications technology, so it might not just be through the cell networks, it might be through Wi-Fi or some other techniques as well. You may be doing some more stringent back and forth and control. You are, in many cases, collecting a lot of data from the Internet of Things, and there you need some kind of some big analytics and some applications to deal with that data. And so how you interact with those things becomes an important part of the story as well. And then, of course, you want to interact with various parts of your enterprise and people and supply chain. So it's a complicated environment. So a couple of companies I've seen have started on the path of we'll just use the same technology, but in the end it ends up being slightly different.